Thank you, Carson. I see we have Julius on the line, which is excellent. This is Tara O'Hare from the WaterSense program. I'm just here to start things off. Julius has been with the WaterSense program for about 5 years now, and he's been managing the outdoor water portion of the program, including some of our labeled products as well as our best practices for water using landscapes. And we also have joining us today Carlos Bustos from he's the Water Conservation Program Manager for the Albuquerque-Barranquillo County Water Authority Utility Authority. He's got over 15 years of experience in the water resources field. Carlos has a unique mix of experience in water resources management, conservation policy, and public water system regulatory compliance. Additionally, he's certified as a Water Level 2 operator and a Qualified Water Efficient Landscaper, also known as QUEL. He's one of the trainers for water efficiency classes for the Building Operator Certification. His professional interests include outdoor efficiency programs, building teams, and finding innovative practical solutions to complex problems. When he's not working, he enjoys biking, small-scale farming, traveling, camping, and snowboarding with his wife and 3 daughters. He holds a degree in economics management, a BBA, and an MS in environmental science, focusing on urban planning and management of natural resources. So now I'm going to hand things off to Julius to get us started.
Tara, it looks like Julius's audio is not connected.
Okay. So I will start things off. If you could go to the next slide, please. I can, there we go. So this is a series of webinars that we are doing this year. We have scheduled several of them for the next few months, as well as others, if you're interested in listening to them, that have been previously recorded.
Okay, it looks like we have Julius now on the audio.
Hi, thanks for that. Sorry, I just started it up and forgot that the mute button was on. So good afternoon, everyone. And I will go ahead and pick up the presentation. So this is our agenda for today. We'll be going over, I'll start with an introduction of WaterSense for those of you who may not be familiar with the WaterSense program. We'll also cover water use trends for landscapes, along with landscape and irrigation best practices, primarily for multifamily and commercial landscapes, but also touching on a little bit of residential landscapes as well. Our guest speaker, as Tara mentioned, is Carlos. He will be presenting on his case study that we also just featured on our website as well, so you'll get some details on that. And then I'll follow it up with a few of the resources we have on the WaterSense page. Next slide. So I'll start with a quick introduction to WaterSense, which is a voluntary program that was launched by EPA in 2006. WaterSense works to promote water efficiency so we can help organizations and consumers save water for future generations. WaterSense label provides a simple way for consumers and businesses to identify water efficient products, programs, practices, and homes. Products earning the WaterSense label have been independently certified for water efficiency and they're tested for performance. The label is reserved for products that reduce water use by at least 20% and perform as well or better than the standard models. Next slide. There's a variety of residential and commercial products eligible for the WaterSense label that can be used in commercial and institutional facilities. As of 2020, we have more than 37,000 product models that have earned the WaterSense label. In addition to these product categories, we also work very closely with Energy Star to include water factors in their specifications and to consider energy savings in ours. WaterSense labels 2 types of irrigation controllers, weather-based irrigation controllers and the newly labeled soil moisture-based irrigation controllers. We also label spray sprinkler bodies that regulate the incoming pressure to the sprinkler. I'll discuss our outdoor labeled products later in this presentation, and you can find more of that information on our website. Next slide. There's a few things to keep in mind when you start tracking water use and evaluating potential improvement projects. The first big one is that the cost of water is deceptively low. Because of the way that water rates are structured, facilities end up paying for water twice, so any wasted water can make a big impact. The water rate is charged based on the amount of water supplied, and the sewer rate is charged based on the amount of water discharged to the sewer. This does not include the cost of energy used to heat the water or pump the water throughout your facility. Because of all these other costs, the true cost of water can be calculated by combining the water and sewer rates and multiplying it by the volume of water used. You must also add in fees for other associated costs to get the complete picture. Second point is that using more water can result in other increased operation and maintenance costs. For example, using more water in cooling towers and laundries increases the cost for treatment, chemicals, and detergents. Also, many pieces of equipment will require more maintenance if you are using more of their capacity. Finally, energy can be wasted if it's used to heat or pump extra water that isn't actually needed. Over time, all of these associated costs add up and factor into the total cost of water. Since we're talking about water use today, I'll also mention one other point. Some utilities will provide a credit for sewer costs if you can prove that the water evaporated instead of being discharged by your facility. This could include water used for irrigation, cooling towers, or pools and spas. Next slide. Within commercial buildings, water use varies depending on building type. Knowing exactly how your building uses water and where it consumes the most, either by tracking meters and submeters or by conducting a water assessment, will help you identify potential efficiency projects and prioritize your efforts. The chart above is an analysis performed by WaterSense, which shows that consistently, water use outdoors for landscaping can be a significant water percentage among these 5 building types. In typical commercial buildings, outdoor water use can account for between 5 to 30% of overall water use. Next slide. It's important to look at outdoor water use when considering ways to be more water efficient. Outdoor water use is a primary driver of peak use for utilities. Water providers must size their systems to meet that peak demand. This capacity is not used very often, so seasonal water use that contributes to peak demand is a very attractive target for jurisdictions trying to bring down their peak demand. Because of this, outdoor water use is typically the first to be restricted during droughts or other shortages. By reducing the water demand for your facility, water providers, which typically size their water system on peak demand use, are less burdened by keeping water at capacity. Outdoor water use restrictions are also visible and easy to police. Jurisdictions can enforce any restrictions because they can drive around and see water being used in the open. Finally, using higher volumes of water can trigger higher water rates. Many utilities also use increasing block rates, where the incremental cost goes up with increased usage, so using larger volumes of water can be very costly. Because of this, your outdoor water use can contribute to placing your facility in higher water rate tier that will cost you more money each month. You also want to protect your investment in plants by using the correct amount of water so your plants are not overwatered. Next slide. Tracking water use is one of the features included in Portfolio Manager. Water meter information can be entered in the Water tab next to the Energy tab. By tracking water use, you can identify where you might be losing unnecessary water. You should keep track of your outdoor water use just like you do with indoor water. If you only have 1 meter for the whole building or campus, you can add a sub-meter to the irrigation system to track it separately. Please note, sub-meters do not need separate utility accounts. The water you use outdoors can come from several sources. You have municipally supplied potable water, which is water that is safe for human consumption, and it's obtained from public water systems that are classified and permitted. You might have municipally supplied reclaimed water, which is wastewater from a public water system, which can be diverted for beneficial uses like irrigation. You may have alternative water generated on site, which is rainwater or stormwater harvested on site and can be reused as irrigation water. Or you may have some other water sources that are obtained from natural freshwater sources that are not municipally supplied, such as surface and groundwater systems, on-site wells, lakes, and streams. These sources can be used as inputs for Portfolio Manager as a way to track your water. Next slide. We'll now have another poll question, and you should be able to access that on the right-hand side of your screen. The poll here is your organization tracking water in Portfolio Manager? And I don't have the actual poll tracking pulled up, so let me know when we're done doing the poll. Oh, there it goes. Okay, so I think that's enough time that everyone may have been able to put in their answers to that poll. So I'll see if we are going to have the results pull up, or we may just go to the next slide. All right. So saving water is not too different than saving energy. It often just requires some focused attention. Most of you have been managing energy for many years, so you already have protocols, procedures, and systems for monitoring and managing energy throughout your facility. In many cases, adding water just requires the addition of water efficiency practices to your standard operating procedures so employees are aware of water use and can work towards managing both energy and water together. Sometimes water management just requires someone to pay attention to water waste instead of writing it off as insignificant. Often, simple changes to your SOPs can reduce water use without incurring any renovation or retrofit costs, sometimes for no cost at all. For example, facility managers should make sure all appliance and equipment are being operated on their most efficient settings at which they can still operate effectively. Also, small-scale retrofit or replacements can result in significant reductions with a minimal capital cost. Continuous water use monitoring can identify leaks and other operational malfunctions so they can be corrected immediately instead of waiting for a monthly bill. It can also help develop and evaluate a comprehensive project list of water-saving opportunities. This will help you focus on your water-saving efforts. You should include water efficiency best practices in employee trainings as well, and point of view signs so that all can assist. Next slide. Now that we've covered where the water comes from, let's talk about how water is used outdoors. As many of you probably experienced, water used for irrigation can be significant and can be one of the major culprits of water waste. Commercial facilities commonly have in-ground irrigation systems used to maintain an aesthetic landscape. Some of you may also have outdoor ornamental water features like fountains and ponds. And finally, if you're a hotel, school, or multifamily facility, you may also have an outdoor pool or spa. Next slide. There are several constant factors we have found to indicate high water use. These can be good places to start when looking for savings. The age of the facility and equipment is a very good indicator. Generally, the older the equipment or fixture, the more water it uses. Plumbing and building codes have become more stringent over time, so older equipment will always use more water. Next, the size of the facility's landscaped and irrigated area can affect the water use depending on the type of plants used and the climate conditions. Anywhere where the watering needs of the plant exceed the amount of precipitation will require irrigation and will use more water to keep the plants alive. Irrigation systems are not always wasteful, but they do result in more water usage compared to a facility without irrigated areas. Facility managers can use the drought status resources to get an idea of the water shortages that may affect their facilities in the short and long term. Minimizing the size of the landscape needing irrigation can help keep water use under control. Microclimates are small localized areas where the climate differs from the surrounding area. It can be as small as a few square feet or as large as many square miles. Next slide. Irrigation is used to supplement water that the landscape loses due to evapotranspiration. In cooler months and in months where rainfall is high, the landscape does not lose water quickly. Therefore, irrigation can be reduced. In warmer months or months with little rainfall, it may be necessary to increase irrigation. This chart is an example of the rainfall and ET plant needs for Tampa, Florida. As you can see from the chart, the time period of water deficit can be different throughout the year. In this case, the highest month of deficit is April, where there is also the largest amount of water needed for supplemental irrigation. Irrigation can be further reduced by choosing plants that are low water use or native. Next slide. A well-designed landscape will minimize any supplemental water needed for your irrigation system. Your soil is the foundation of your landscape. Healthy soils help develop deep plant root systems and allow water to properly infiltrate. Maintain good topsoil that captures rain as it falls and releases water back to plants over time. If possible, avoid including steep slopes in your design. A good tip is that if it's too steep to climb, it's too steep for irrigation. If you have a graded area, consider installing rain gardens to capture stormwater runoff. Adding mulch to your plant beds keeps soils cool and minimizes evaporation. Finally, your landscape should be designed by grouping plants according to their water needs to promote efficient irrigation in those zones that do require supplemental water. Next slide. You should also consider the type of plants you use. Several different types of plants can be used to create a functional and attractive landscape. Facility managers can consider any combination of trees, shrubs, ground cover, and turf grass to best fit their needs. If you use drought-tolerant and climate-appropriate plantings and materials, you may not need to water as much to maintain your landscape quality. These types of plants can require less time and cost to maintain as well. States or municipalities will often maintain plant lists of native and climate-appropriate plants, so check your local Department of Natural Resources webpage. Install shade trees since shading reduces watering requirements of covered plants. And your landscape should be designed by grouping plants according to their water needs and hydrozones in order to promote efficient irrigation in those zones that do require supplemental water. Next slide. As we saw in that earlier chart, outdoor spaces can be 20 to 30% of a building's water use. Experts estimate that up to 50% of that water used for irrigation is lost due to wind, evaporation, and overwatering. Also, poor irrigation system design, improper installation and lack of maintenance, and improper scheduling can be contributing factors to this water loss. Next slide. WaterSense now labels both weather-based and soil moisture-based irrigation controllers. These controllers similarly operate by adjusting your irrigation schedule based on local weather and on-site conditions. That way, the controller you choose can be whichever properly fits the needs of your landscape. Weather-based controllers use a combination of weather station data and evapotranspiration data from your site to determine if the landscape needs to allow or bypass an irrigation cycle. WBICs also have the capability to store information from multiple irrigation zones, depending on the size of your landscape. Soil moisture-based controllers track the exact amount of water in your soil and will bypass an irrigation cycle if soil water is sufficient. Depending on the uniformity of your landscape, you may need multiple soil moisture controllers connected to a base controller to accurately irrigate. Next slide. Whether you use a clock timer, a weather-based controller, or a soil moisture-based controller, the end driver of your water use is your irrigation schedule. Irrigation schedules should be updated monthly to account for changing weather conditions. Your landscape will need less water in spring and fall months than in the high peak of summer. If you don't have a controller that adjusts the schedule for you, you'll want to make sure you do it yourself. Irrigation zones should be scheduled individually based on each zone's watering needs. Consider exposure to sun, wind, plant type, soil type, and your sprinkler type when determining the irrigation schedule for each zone. And if you see any pooling or puddling on your landscape, check for a leak in your irrigation system. All these tips are available in our irrigation controller brochure, Is Your Watering Under Control? It goes into detail on adjusting your schedule based on the season, different irrigation requirements based on zone, and the different types of controller technologies available. Next slide. Sprinkler bodies are the housing that connects to the irrigation water supply line and holds the sprinkler head. Internal pressure regulation keeps the sprinkler outlet pressure consistent even when the incoming pressure changes. If water pressure is left unchecked, sprinklers can lose water from misting and overspray. By installing pressure regulating sprinklers, the result is a more consistent flow rate across the system. Maintaining the pressure also keeps a consistent droplet size that reduces water loss due to misting and overspray. If you're going to replace an old sprinkler with one that is water efficient, make sure you replace all of the sprinklers in that zone to maintain a consistent pressure. Next slide. Water waste can hinder your water efficiency efforts. Throughout the irrigation season, check for water spray that is landing on hardscapes, leaks, and fix broken sprinkler heads. If you see any pooling or puddling on your landscape, check for a leak in your irrigation system. Installing meters can help indicate inefficiencies or system leaks. If you have water meters or sub-meters installed, read them at least monthly and analyze water use trends. From a system maintenance perspective, be sure to audit your irrigation system periodically, approximately every 3 to 4 years, to identify system deficiencies. You can find a list of irrigation professionals who have been certified by one or more WaterSense labeled programs in the WaterSense Directory of Certified Professionals. Next slide. Your efforts towards water efficiency can be coupled with your stormwater management plan to reduce water use and excess runoff. Green infrastructure designs mimic the natural environment to increase infiltration and decrease runoff. It can be used to reduce the hardscape area around a building. The goal is to slow it down, soak it in, and spread it out. For example, planter boxes can replace strip grass between the sidewalk and the street to capture runoff that would normally go to storm drains. Rain gardens use native plants and healthy soils to capture rainfall and runoff and allow it to naturally seep into the soil. In new construction, both planter boxes and rain gardens should be designed with water efficiency in mind. The structures are typically built with new plants that need an establishment period up to several months. Water can be saved during the establishment period by using water-efficient irrigation components or drip irrigation rather than watering by hand. Next slide. The Pacific Institute recently released a sustainable landscapes guide that's focused on the benefits of instituting sustainable landscape practices on commercial and industrial properties. It provides an excellent overview of the different types of green infrastructure elements, how they're beneficial to the property, and how they can be installed. Factors such as water availability and the rising cost of water can make sustainable landscapes a great opportunity. Next slide. Here are some savings you might see by replacing your system hardware. A properly installed WaterSense labeled weather-based irrigation controller can reduce your irrigation water use by 15%. Replacing existing sprinkler bodies or installing new sprinkler bodies with integral pressure regulation throughout an in-ground irrigation system with higher water pressure can reduce their irrigation water use by as much as 22%. Water-efficient sprinkler nozzles can reduce water use by as much as 30% compared to standard pop-up sprinklers. And using micro-irrigation on trees, shrubs, and plant beds can use 50% less water than conventional sprinkler systems. Remember that if you replace components on your irrigation system, you should adjust your irrigation schedule for that zone to account for the changes. Next slide. The WaterSense website has several case studies focused on outdoor water use. The study on the left focuses on Harvest Gold Village, on how Harvest Gold Village used recommendations from an irrigation professional's landscape audit, installed WaterSense labeled irrigation products, and utilized a grant from Northern Colorado Water Conservancy District. Through these methods, they were able to save over $22,500 just in the first year of the project. The case study on the right will be presented by our guest speaker in just a moment. You can read more about both projects, along with other case studies that we have highlighted around the country on the WaterSense Case Studies webpage on the website. And now I'll pass it over to Carlos to present on his portion.
Thank you, Julius. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I'm glad we can make it for this lunchtime, at least here in Albuquerque. So the project I'll be talking about is about La Paloma Apartments. And they worked with us and our local contractor and our local landscaping company to replace apartment and plumbing fixtures and also upgrade their complex irrigation system, which was facing a lot of issues. In the first year, the property saved more than 5 million gallons of water within the first year, and the project paid for itself within 2 years. And thanks in part to one of our rebate programs that we'll be talking about. This property was built in 1994, so it's pretty old. The irrigation system is as old, so it's causing a lot of problems. It's located here in Albuquerque, and it's one of the biggest multifamily apartments that we have with 424 units and 422 square feet of irrigated area, almost 8 acres. The total project cost that we'll be going to be talking about today added up to $83,000, which we incentivized for $41,000. So this opportunity was presented to us in 2016, and one of the issues that the apartment association was facing is that they have only 1 meter, so it was hard to really figure out where their water loss was occurring. The other thing is that a lot of the complex was built before the New Mexico Plumbing Code amendments of 1996, so they still had a lot of high water use fixtures inside. And also outside, the site pressure had been changing because of growth and because of issues and just age and lack of maintenance of the irrigation system. So that was causing misting and a lot of underwatering, so their landscaping appearance was not looking that good. And as a result of this high pressure, they always have constant leaks. The site is turf intensive. 80% of the site has turf, and much of it is in slopes, which made it harder to irrigate. This aging irrigation system, if it was properly managed, it could have lasted a little bit longer, but nevertheless, it's more than 20 years old. So it was also receiving a lot of waterways infractions and complaints for over a decade for overflowed and oversprayed. The average water use in the winter for this apartment is about 1.5 million gallons, and it peaked to 3.5 million gallons average in the summer. So as Julius mentioned, about 50% of that usage was going outdoors, and a lot of it was being lost. Next slide, please. Okay, sorry. There you go. So a little bit of background. In 2016, we started providing via our contractor SmartUse water history and water tool reports to help apartments and large users effectively manage their usage throughout the year. This report looks somewhat similar to what you're seeing on the screen, where we provide a water history, sometimes 2 years, sometimes 3 years, sometimes 4 years, and we let customers know about like the different patterns of usage in their property. We estimated initially that this project could potentially save $7,500 just by following a proper irrigation curve. This water efficiency project, it started in 2016 with building the relations, but it wasn't until 2019 that we were actually able to like implement the project. Next slide. So what did we do? Here's the picture of the apartments. You can see that the style is pretty 1990s, and you can see the slopes and the abundant turf. So the first thing we did is that via our contractor SmartUse, we conducted an indoor and outdoor water audit to identify the potential upgrades and associated predicted water savings and return on investment. This is essential. Our ROI is essential for property managers to justify and also make decisions and look at the feasibility of the investment. Through SmartUse, their WaterSense label qualified water efficient landscaper, we conducted the landscape audit, and it quickly became apparent that the best way to start was with La Paloma outdated irrigation system and the associated runoff issues that resulted from the land's steep slope. Having the audit report and after going through some internal challenges, in 2019, La Paloma hired a local water-efficient landscaping company, Green Summit, to upgrade their irrigation system. The firm incorporated system-wide pressure regulation at the valves and retrofitted sprinklers with high-efficiency sprinkler nozzles. These changes will ensure that the irrigation system operated at its intended pressure and flow rate for maximum efficiency, which was their main issue. Green Summit also installed check valves that kept water in an irrigation system at the end of the cycle rather than allowing it to drain. This reduced the water waste complaints that we constantly receive from the apartments. These outdoor improvements led to more consistent irrigation across the landscape, so it improved the landscape health. And these outdoor and save water, as you will learn as well. We also install through the landscaping company a WaterSense label weather-based irrigation controller with a rain and freeze sensor. This controller uses real-time weather data and landscape attributes to irrigate only when plants need water. Although Albuquerque is relatively dry, the additional rain sensors ensure that the irrigation system will run neatly during or after the rain. The property managers also decided to upgrade all apartment units with new shower heads and new faucet aerators, WaterSense label models. To gain support from residents, we work with La Paloma to develop communication material and help residents identify leaks and understand the value of installing WaterSense label products. In total, indoors, we install efficient WaterSense faucet aerators and shower heads in all units, 720 shower heads and 424 aerators. We estimate that this resulted in almost 3.1 million gallons saved in the first year. In regards to irrigation, we install a whole system pressure reducer, master valve. We install also different pressure reducers and individual valves, and we replace 520 older model nozzles with more efficient, high-efficiency nozzles. And we also installed a WaterSense smart controller. We estimate that this savings alone resulted in 2.4 million gallons. Next slide. This project was possible because of one of our newest rebates. It's called a WaterSmart CPR, and the way it works is that it's a performance-based. So projects must result in a minimal annual savings of at least 100,000 gallons. That's a low threshold. And if they succeed, they can qualify for $10 per unit of water or 1 CCF saved in the first 12 months after implementation. We cover up to 50% of the project cost or up to $50,000, whichever is lower. The project, this rebate is basically an agreement that we enter with our customers to improve efficiency by providing this financial incentive and just having an opportunity for customers to let us know what they want to work on, and then we tailor it to modify to work with them to fund the project. We fund through this rebate commercial, multifamily, municipal, and industrial projects. This is aimed at large users. We got other rebates for residential. And basically, the way it works is some of the examples that projects can do is on-site water reuse projects. They can replace less efficient equipment with more efficient equipment, such as what they did here. They can improve cooling tower water usage, modifications and operations, and also any comprehensive industrial processes that reduces water consumption. Next slide, please. The project gives the opportunity for those that don't have the capital improvement to invest as much. They can still get a rebate, but as you can see here, a gallon saved rebate and the customer rebate earned for each 100,000 gallons saved, they can get $1,336. And if they end up saving 4 million gallons or more, they can max out and get the $50,000. Next slide, please. So what are the results? Obviously, we're pretty excited with the results. All this happened while we were facing the pandemic and the stay-at-home orders, where we saw an increase of 5% to 8% in multifamily apartments, all while facing somewhat of the startup of this drought that we're facing. So it's pretty exciting to see that apartments can continue to save water and do this all amongst the challenges that we've been facing in the last 2 years. The total cost of the project was $83,200, and half of that was returned as rebate. And so as you can imagine, the property managers were also pretty happy with the results. Also, besides that, the site saved $20,000 in the first year just on water bills alone. This is expected to continue, and we're continue to see that trend. By the end of the second year, 2021, meaning this year, the project is expected to be at break-even point. So in 2 years, the return on investment and savings will perpetually be there. The landscape contractor, property manager, and us felt that the project was a huge success and well worth the effort. The owners have already saved almost half the cost to them of the project in the first year. And it took teamwork to implement the successful water efficiency improvements. It took us 3 years to build that rapport, to build that sort of like a partnership, and not only with the property manager, but also with the folks that we're going to be servicing and working with them, like the landscape professionals. And ultimately, we ended up issuing a $41,600 rebate towards this indoor and irrigation systems upgrade. La Paloma staff are able to leverage smart use analytical expertise, which is our contractor, so they continue to receive water history, they continue to receive service from us as needed. Next slide, please. So some of the lessons learned. Our utility tries to save water on a regional level. Because we do live in a desert climate, and our low-hanging fruit now is, outside of residential folks now, is multifamilies. I think nationally we all are facing that same challenge, is how to tap into and how to work more with property managers that manage a big multifamily complex and apartments. Smart Use, as I mentioned, continues to monitor water savings, and to date, that peak demand has been reduced from summer months of an average of 2 million gallons per month. 3.5 million gallons per month. That peak demand has been reduced to an average of about 2.5 million gallons. So that's a 1 million gallon peak demand savings during the summer months. So that's pretty successful. The most important thing is that we're not getting waterways complaints from this complex anymore. So all water is being effectively used, and it's not being lost or considered fugitive. La Paloma Apartments was also encouraged because of the rebate. Outside of that, they did tap into a Fannie Mae green loan, but like I mentioned, within 2 years, they got their return on investment. The most challenging aspects of the project were the changes in the irrigation system. As you can imagine, dealing with pressure, once you start working on one side of the system, the other side of the system starts having issues. So ultimately, that was the biggest constraint and challenge. But as you can see in the results, we ended up figuring out. And the professional landscaper company did a great job out there. It took a few weeks just to put in the indoor components, and most of the work, which in total almost like 4 months of the project, went to the outdoor components. Next slide, please. So the property manager acknowledged the value of public information. A lot of these folks, it is a rental community, so it was important for folks to understand why they were going into their houses, why they were replacing their shower heads, the importance of replacing their aerators, and and convincing them to not go back and install a high-use shower head. And also the work outside. They put a lot of signs outdoors to make sure that folks living in their property knew what was going on, and they got them involved from the very beginning. So I think that was key in making this project successful. I want to acknowledge La Paloma Apartments and the property managers that worked with us, also our contractors, Smart Use, and the landscaping company Green Summit, and also the Environmental Protection Agency Water Sense program for helping us create the case study and also present it today. If we got time for questions, or we're going to leave that for next, but with that, La Paloma case study. Thank you.
And thank you, Carlos. I think we're going to go through a few remaining slides, and then we will cover questions that anyone may have. So thanks for presenting your project, and we were excited you were able to, we were excited to be able to feature you as one of our case studies on our website. Just as a reminder to everyone, that's on our case studies webpage on the WaterSense website, and you can see all of our other case studies as well. We've also developed many other technical tools and resources to help with conducting assessments and creating a water balance for properties. EPA keeps all of our resources for commercial facilities on the commercial tools and training section of the WaterSense website. This section of our website houses the WaterSense at Work guidebook, but it also has a lot of other helpful tools to help commercial facilities learn about ways to reduce water use, such as the assessment tools we touched on today. WaterSense also posts case studies and links for recorded or other upcoming live webinars on the website as well. Next slide. Many of the outdoor best practices that we talked about today are compiled in WaterSense's Commercial and Institutional Best Management Practices Guidebook called WaterSense at Work. It was developed to help commercial and institutional facilities understand, manage, and reduce water use. Chapter 5 of that manual covers outdoor water use and goes over ways to reduce water use in landscaping, irrigation, pools and spas, and outdoor water features. There's case studies included throughout the document to demonstrate how commercial facilities, just like yours, have been able to successfully implement water efficiency best practices. And finally, we released a guide specifically for the multifamily sector. You can find it on the website that's listed there for multifamily housing. Next slide. We have other resources on the website with tips for residential and commercial landscapes. The WaterSmart Landscapes Guide covers many of the tips we've talked about today, such as plan ahead, use native plants, plant based on site conditions, group plants, and minimize turf grass and steep slopes. We also have 2 guides for micro-irrigation, one for irrigation professionals and one for homeowners. Micro-irrigation is beneficial because it provides a low flow rate of irrigation directly to the root zone of plant. The application of water will depend on the plant needs. Drip line emitters work well for trees and can be shaped to fit the landscape, and then microsprays and point source emitters work well for shrubs that may not be in a direct line. Lastly, for each of our labeled products, we have many reports that provide information on installation and maintenance for both professionals and casual audiences. The reports cover how each product is valuable to water efficiency, installation and maintenance tips, troubleshooting, and how products and practices come together in the landscape. Next slide. If you want to get started saving waters outdoor right away, you can tackle a few of these easier items. On our website, we have a checklist you can use that covers all the different irrigation components, landscape features, tips for checking plants, and soil health that you should check for. Other tips like add mulch and topsoil where appropriate and aerate high traffic areas to increase your soil's water retention and reduce evaporation losses. You can allow your turf grass to grow a little higher, promoting that deeper root growth, and it helps to promote a more drought-resistant turf. Easiest way to reduce water use for irrigation is to adjust your zone-by-zone schedules regularly to meet the plant needs. You can also apply cycle and soak scheduling to steep slopes and clay soils while watering other landscapes less frequently with more volume at each watering. Check your sprinkler heads to make sure they're aimed appropriately at your landscape instead of hardscapes or other areas, and fix any broken heads. Lastly, you can install and read a water meter dedicated to your irrigation system to help with proper system management and track your water use using Energy Star's Portfolio Manager. Next slide. Just a reminder again that Energy Star and WaterSense are hosting additional webinars this year. You can join us in July to learn about EPA's 1 to 100 score for multifamily buildings. I've included the topics here we'll be covering later this year. We'll also be including more details and registration links in the Energy Star monthly training opportunities notices. If you've missed a previous webinar, recordings are available at the Energy Star Trainings and WaterSense websites. Next slide. And in case you can't wait, here are the webinars and dates for the series we did last year, so you can find them in the previous webinar recordings in the Energy Star Training Center. And next we have our final slide. This is our contact information for the Energy Star program, WaterSense, as well as Carlos, if you would like to reach out to anyone directly for any of your questions that we might not touch on today. So with that, I think we're going to answer a few questions, and if you have any other questions, I believe there is a chat function that you'd be able to input questions.